Joining me now is Aurel Braun, International Relations and Political Science Professor at the University of Toronto. Professor, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
What impact will this ruling have on Israel going forward?
It is damaging in terms of reputation, but not in terms of stopping the operations. There's a difference between declaratory law and operative law. In terms of declaratory law, this suggested the possibility that there could be genocide. It was a very tortured kind of language. It was a compromised type of decision that was made by the court, partly to try to save the reputation of the court, which itself is a rather poor one. But at the same time, it did not order Israel to cease its operations. It did not order Israel to withdraw. And these were very, very important considerations on the part of Israel. So the Israeli government can live with this, but obviously the accusation of genocide, which was so deplored, not just by Israel, by United States, by Germany. The French foreign minister said that this crossed a moral line. That should have been dropped. And in that sense, South Africa, trying to support Hamas, trying to damage Israel, they did gain something.
Will this ruling accomplish anything? Does anybody win in this?
We have to look at the World Court, formerly known as the International Court of Justice. This is the court that has been ignored time and again by the major powers. A ruling against the United States, the Nicaragua case, was ignored. In 2022, it ruled that Russia must stop its actions in Ukraine. That was ignored. So this is not a court that can enforce its judgments. Its judgments have to be enforced through the Security Council. And in the Security Council, the 5 permanent members have a veto power. So this court is a heavily politicized forum. And so if we think of this in the same sense as we think of the Supreme Court of Canada, we are mistaken. This is a forum where you have countries such as Lebanon, which is fundamentally controlled by Hezbollah, having a vote, Somalia, China, which is committing horrific acts against the Uyghurs, and Russia holds the vice presidency of this court.
Will Israel try and implement any of the recommendations from this, or are they doing it already?
Israel claims that they are doing this already, but they are meant to come back in a month's time, and it's possible there could be harsher measures leveled at them. But at the moment, this is a solution that all parties in a sense can live with. There was an acknowledgement at the beginning that Hamas did commit a massacre, but this is not something that will address the issue of hostages. So we'll see what happens in a month's time. But I don't think this burnished the reputation of the court. I don't think it resolves the issue. This is a case that ought not have been brought to begin with.
Where does this leave the U.S., which has been a vocal supporter of Israel, and Canada as well?
This is where we may have some differences. The U.S. has been very strongly supporting Israel. The Biden administration has stated very clearly that this whole case should not have been brought, that there's no basis for it. And our government has not been as forthright on it. So we will have to see what the reaction will be by our government. I suspect it may be somewhat different than that of the United States. The United States was clearly involved in working out this kind of compromise solution where Israel has very harsh innuendos leveled against it, but substantively, Israel is allowed to continue the operation to make sure that Hamas cannot commit the genocide that it did in October, and that it is removed as the ruler of Gaza, both for the sake of Israel and also for the sake of the Gazan people.
Will this go beyond this, do you think? I mean, they're talking 2 years of it if it were to continue in the courts. Will this get to that point, or will it be over before then?
It is difficult to know, because you're entirely correct that the actual decision whether genocide is being committed, that will take a much, much longer time. And certainly we can all hope that this conflict is over by then, because the loss of any civilian life on either side is a terrible tragedy. But genocide looks at intent. And the party that clearly showed intent to commit genocide was Hamas. And there's a consensus among democracies that Hamas has to be removed, because Hamas has been a tragedy not only for Israel, but Hamas has been a disaster for the people of Gaza and of Palestine in general.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Professor Aurel Braun, International Relations and Political Science Professor at the University of Toronto.